In today's episode, my guest is Nisrine Maktabi. She is a Lebanese-Canadian psychotherapist with Iranian ancestry. She is also a trauma-informed coach who helps multicultural and third culture individuals reclaim their power and heal intergenerational and displacement wounds. As the founder of the Rooted and Resilient program, Nisrine weaves somatic healing, nervous system regulation, and spiritual wisdom into her work. She is a fierce advocate for newcomers and displaced people, guiding them to break free from survival patterns and step into sovereignty. Her work is rooted in lived experience, deep compassion, and a vision of a more connected, conscious world. Hello, this is your host, Renata Ortega. Welcome to today's episode of the Cycle Breaker and Changemaker podcast. This podcast is all about how to break free from negative generational cycles in order to create meaningful, lasting changes. For helpful tools and answers to your most pressing questions, be sure to follow me on Instagram and Facebook at Cycle Breaker Changemaker. I look forward to helping you on your cycle breaking and change-making journey. I promise you will find nothing more rewarding than this. Nisrine, would you like to introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm a registered psychotherapist and coach in Toronto, Canada. I have over 15 years experience working with multicultural people, newcomers in Canada and globally from the Arab world who struggle with attachment and relocation issues and trauma.
Wonderful. Thank you. So, Nisrine, I'm going to ask you a few questions, and I'd love to hear your answers today. So the first question that I have is, can you give us an example in your life of a time that you've broken a cycle?
Absolutely. I come from a family that is very loving, but also traditional in some ways, where women are supposed to have specific roles and sacrifice in specific ways. And I believe that I'm not doing that right now in my life. I'm not repeating the patterns of my mother and my grandparents, where, they transmit patriarchy in the way they parent, in the way they are around the world, right? So not transmitting a patriarchy that is very codependent.
Wonderful. That's very commendable to not to foster that patriarchy. That's not a healthy way of living. So that's wonderful that you're working on breaking that cycle and that you live that every day. Mm-hmm. I was wondering if you could walk us through a moment when you realized you were carrying inherited patterns that weren't yours and how you began to break them.
There is many, many ways we do that. One of them would be there's the attachment part, and then there is the worrying too much part, right? So one of the patterns I've had is and it's a survival pattern, right? From my childhood, I grew up in the war and always looking for the problem and rushing to fix it. And I believe pain is where the light enters you. I was doing this on automatic in my life. I didn't realize. And then there was a moment that it was so painful that I realized actually, and was doing a lot of reflection and therapy, I realized I was myself recreating that pattern of danger that I grew up in, of the war and having to escape, and just this, the nervous system in flight and fight that I've had. And so now when there is a situation like this, I can feel my nervous system gearing up for okay, let's do this. And I really feel it in my arms.
Wow.
And in my thinking,
Yeah.
So I do different somatic stuff and I just talk to the part and I calm myself down. And it's a daily practice, because our nervous system was imprinted since we were born and grew up. And so I use different tools. It's really, really a lifelong practice. So that's how I break it.
Wonderful. And I couldn't agree more. It is a lifelong practice. I found myself stuck in flight so many times, and I found myself frozen so many times. And I constantly have to, it's sort of, it's circular. It gets better, but then it goes back to a place where I'm trapped as a young child, and I have to remind myself I'm present, and I have to talk to my younger self and let her know she's safe. But it's work that never really goes away. It gets, I would say I recognize it better and it becomes easier to manage, but I'm still managing it. And it's something that I've learned I will always have to manage. It's not something that ever leaves your body because it's imprinted on you when you're so young.
Absolutely. And one of the things, if I may add, that I do is to celebrate the wins.
Yes, that's so important.
And the glimmers of beauty and gratitude, what we have to create in our nervous system, the capacity to also appreciate joy and gratitude. And when it's okay to be bored and not to have things a specific way, because that's what the anxiety and the trauma wants. It's very rigid. Yeah.
That's a good point. It's my mind has always been quite active, and it's hard to be in a place where it's settled and not look. It's always looking for something to worry about or to break down, right? It's always looking for what it remembers or what it's familiar with, I should say, not remembers. How has displacement shaped your nervous system, identity, and sense of home? And what do you now teach others about rehoming themselves?
Displacement has shaped my nervous system in a specific way, and everybody's experience of displacement and how it has shaped them is completely different according to their life. I was born in 1973, so 2 years before the Lebanese Civil War, and then there was the repeated Israeli invasions. There was always this instability and fear of death, bombs falling, and I didn't feel safe in the basement, what we call shelter. It was a stinky basement, because there was old stuff in it and everybody was jam-packed. There was a generator that doesn't work there. And, adults were lost. Adults themselves didn't know what to do. And the kids, as kids, we had to play cards. We had to distract ourselves. And this was really like gaslighting myself, pretending that there was no hug to say, acknowledging the danger and then connecting to say we're okay, right? And so my nervous system didn't really find that loop. So that's why it's like this open looking for danger and running away. So I left everybody in the shelter when I was less than 10. And I went up on the 5th floor, which is our apartment, and I stayed there alone because when I was downstairs, I heard the stories on the radio of families dying in a similar shelter because it was very shallow and the bombs would come on top.
Wow.
So this not finding safety and attachment during physical danger and going up has affected me in the sense of not finding safety and attachment. Always looking for problems, like you said.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's been work to find safety. I have some safe attachments, but I notice when this siren looking for danger of abandonment, always looking for it, and then sounding the alarm. My identity, I feel identity is never fixed for anybody. And is always changing. And it is something that we define ourselves. So I'm a human first and foremost. And I honor my ancestors who are Persian, Middle Eastern, and much, much more. And the sense of home, like you say, I personally miss home so much, living in Canada.
Yeah.
Toronto is very different than home. So I create pockets of home for me, and it's this rehoming within the self. And that's the work that I do with my clients, is because especially when you are from cultures of patriarchy, and I call it well-meaning patriarchy, because what they say is, oh, women are weak, we have to protect them. That's what my father used to say. And oh, men, they are strong, because of this thinking of shame. Once a woman is out there, a man can take advantage of her. So, I mean, patriarchy is very problematic, but I know that my father was well-meaning.
I've never heard someone say well-meaning patriarchy. That just opened my eyes to it, because I've always seen it and felt it as such a negative thing and a negative narrative in my life, and having to deal with ego and trying to find my place in that space, and trying to be allowed to be a strong woman, because it hasn't always been allowed. Can you tell me more about the pockets of home? Is that the people that you're with? Is that maybe dishes that you make? Like, what's a pocket of home to you?
Well, definitely food plays a big role in home.
Yeah,
right?
I can imagine.
The taste of home is so beautiful. So when I cook something from home, but home is in our soul. That's how I believe. And our soul is this part of us that is never tarnished, no matter how you live through difficulties, right? This is the part that, you survived childhood abuse, you survived war. This part that the sun always shines on, because you wake up the next day and there is the sun. So the feeling of home is really this reconnecting to the self, no matter what's happening outside. I mean, we live in a world where everybody is moving, it seems, right?
Racing. Yeah.
Great. Everything is moving and everybody is moving. Everybody is looking to improve their life. So the feeling of home is ultimately about reconnecting to yourself and knowing that even though everything is changing, you're connected to yourself. And really, it's about connecting to the divine, that your identity is not necessarily a place or a person or a family. Your identity is that and so much more. And it can change as you live. So what I do with my clients is the rehoming is really healing the attachment wound, which is, be it the familial attachment wound, community attachment wound, or country attachment wound. Because when your country disappoints you, or your family disappoints you, or you have to leave an unsafe country, the home becomes like a minefield.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, that's how it feels like. And I'm working on a book calling it When Home is a Minefield. So
wonderful title. Wow. I love that.
Lebanon is a little bit scary because we don't know when it is going to be attacked, but people live there all the time. But when your nervous system is so agitated, it becomes like a minefield. So it's recreating this feeling of home inside of you, wherever you are, through somatic exercises, through journaling with our survival parts, the parts that made us run away. Maybe people left their home because they want better economic situation. Maybe they were gay and where they were was punished for being a specific way. Maybe they were a woman and it was punished. Maybe whatever the reason may be, we develop these survival parts. So we dialogue with these survival parts so we can shine the light on the soul, this part of us that is never damaged. So I use parts work and nervous system regulation and community work.
Wonderful. And when is your book coming out? Is it something that you're working on now? Okay, wonderful.
But I feel like part of my healing is definitely I have to write my story. So I have written so much and it's just now putting it together.
Wonderful. Oh, I can't wait to read it. The final question I have for you today is, you work with multicultural and third culture individuals. What are some unseen patterns that they carry, and how do you help them to reclaim their power?
So a big one is imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome is really a very big umbrella that can show many things. So basically, it's not knowing who you are and wondering, who am I? And then feeling like whatever you do, you're not good enough, you're doing the wrong thing. So low self-esteem, I would put it under the umbrella of low self-esteem. Another thing is, I worked in the universities here, and I mean, I've witnessed my family, but it's this huge people pleasing.
Oh, yes.
Part of the survival response is fawn and people please. And in our cultures, family becomes so much more strong. Your attachment, your belonging to your tribe becomes your survival, especially when you relocate and you have this family. So people want to do what their parents tell them to do, which is marry of a specific culture or socioeconomic status or study a specific degree or do a specific job, while the individual, the younger one who's moved and is in a different culture now, maybe is exploring who they are and has honor for their ancestors and their family, but at the same time they want to do something else, right? So they feel this big sense of betrayal and guilt if they detach and do something else. So it's about reconciling with the people pleaser inside of you, that this is, thank you, people pleaser, for keeping me safe. And to gently and kindly then rediscover yourself. Who are you? What do you really want? If you didn't have to please all the time. And letting this part, because the flip side of the people pleaser is this really incredible creativity that you have. And then I teach my clients something I call authentic relating. It's a big school right now I studied. And then you relate authentically with your family of origin. So you listen to their demands, because sometimes the family of origin, they have a lot of insistence and expectations and roles. You're the man of the family. This is your role. You're the woman, the child, the daughter. You have to be good daughter. You have to take care of us. So how to honor the family of origin who might need the child to be an interpreter, for example. But at the same time, listen, and I call it deep listening, but you do what you want to do, and you stay true to yourself. You marry the person you want to marry. You enter the career you want to enter. So I work with clients who have huge people pleaser tendencies, and slowly they unwind, and then they marry the person they really want to marry, and they let the parent have their disappointment.
Right.
Have their feeling, and not be responsible to appeasing the parents' disappointment and anxiety that the son didn't marry from the same culture. Say, you know what? That's okay. Because what happens before they go through the transformation with me is when the mother starts insisting, they can't handle the mother's anxiety of insisting. They just do what she wants to do. And they build so much resentment. And so the funny thing is that when you don't do what you really want, you actually damage the love with your family.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's such a hard lesson to learn. Something I loved about what you said is that you said thank you for the emotion, for the purpose that it has, which is to keep you safe. And sometimes you just have to acknowledge that the emotion's happening. It's there. Thank you for trying to keep me safe. Thank you for trying to protect me. And then you also said to be kind to yourself, which is so important, because it's really hard to be kind to yourself when you're worried about what your mom or your dad thinks. You're worried about, keeping everybody else happy because it feels easier than keeping yourself happy. And at the end of the day, you're just chipping away at your own self, and you're just reinforcing all these negative behavior patterns that you don't even realize are negative behavior patterns, because it's just been ingrained in you that you have to be how everybody else wants you to be. So I think it's really important to be patient with yourself, to thank yourself for having the emotion. There's no wrong emotion. And for not losing the sight of the fact that you are your own whole being, and that you can't keep everybody happy. It's completely impossible. And it's a very unrealistic expectation that society has put upon everybody. And you will be happier, like you said, when you put up the boundaries and you start saying no and you start saying yes to yourself. The biggest breakthrough I had was when I finally put myself forward and I got myself away from an abuser and I got myself away from a home that was unsafe. But for years and years, I stayed in it because it was easier, I thought, than leaving it. So what you said is really, really impactful and so important. And I'd love to hear about the webinar you have coming up on June 25th. Would you mind sharing with us what that's about and how we can find it?
Yes, absolutely. So on my website, there's a link to the webinar to register. So the webinar is really time to understand what is relocation trauma, what is attachment trauma, and how we can reconnect to ourselves and rehoming ourselves, get rooted and resilient wherever we are. Because when you relocate, what's happening, a lot of the times, if you get rejected, it triggers a lot of abandonment wounds. And when this happens, people get into the fight, flight, freeze, fawn. So they might give up on their dreams or may run after the things that are wrong for them.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of Cycle Breaker and Changemaker. I would love to hear from you and to receive your feedback. Remember, you can reach me on Instagram or Facebook at Cycle Breaker Changemaker. Please rate, review, and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts in order to help me continue to help you. I am looking forward to having you join me for the next episode. Until then, please take care.